Liberty Mutual denied all of my contents coverage when I had called specifically to cover that. They undervalued my truck by at least $1,000. But then when they valued my trailer, they deducted thousands of dollars where they should have added thousands of dollars because my trailer was so much better than their comparables. And so they just robbed me in every way that I could and insulted me along the way and didn't call me back when they said they would, and encouraged me to do work and then told me that it wasn't covered anyway. And in all ways were very, very rude. And they've lied a lot, lied at every level. And I think someone is behind the scenes pulling the strings, and when someone says they're going to help me, someone else stops them from doing it. All right, switching to Liberty Mutual was the worst decision I made in 2017. The year before, I had been forced by financial setbacks to sell my home and move into a small travel trailer, and I became a full-time RVer, a category of American that's becoming more and more common in today's economy. And also, if you'll allow me a brief bit of background, I'm in the largest demographic of Americans who've worked all their lives but still live in poverty, women who raise their children alone after divorcing their husbands for less than 10 years. And so I get no Social Security credit from the man that I put through school, helped launch his career, and for whom I raised his kids for 20 years. No credit, so I live on a very small Social Security check, and I thank you for letting me give that background. So in 2017, my credit union sent me a letter that Liberty Mutual was offering excellent rates to their members. So I called and asked to insure my truck and trailer for everything that I should. I wanted to cover both vehicles plus my possessions since I was living full-time in the trailer. And the next week I called back because I realized I'd undervalued the trailer, not having included the tow package and the photovoltaic system I'd had professionally designed and installed, and some other upgrades, and also increased the amount of my possessions from $5,000 to $15,000. I just didn't know how much I had, and I wanted to be safe. So after 3 calls on 3 different days, I was confident that I was appropriately insured. Now, I was 65 at the time and had an excellent driving record with no accident claims in my entire life. And yet, 6 weeks later, I was in a terrible highway crash that would leave me homeless, with no vehicle, and with a concussion and a whiplash. Though I was in some sort of shock, and I didn't realize I had a concussion and whiplash and really needed to be taking care of my spine and brain. At first, Liberty Mutual seemed helpful, but really quickly they became problematic in nearly every way. The first thing was they told me I had to remove all my possessions, that's everything I own practically, from inside my truck and trailer within 24 hours. I thought this seemed awfully soon, and the next day was Sunday anyway, so I got an extension and had 48 hours, which was barely enough time to solicit friends with trucks and the willingness to help me move everything. And I didn't know that I had this concussion and whiplash again. And I lifted and moved scores of boxes in those 48 hours, thousands of pounds, which I'm certain made my concussion and whiplash much worse. And later I learned that the storage fee at the local wrecking yard was only $30 a day. So Liberty Mutual could have saved money by just giving me time to move my things and not hurt myself. So I really seriously hurt myself. And for the next months, I could only mentally focus for an hour or 2 a day while they start demanding more and more and more paperwork from me. Anyway, I had 3 different agents, one for my truck, one for my trailer, and one for my medical, which was fine. But after working for 6 weeks with my trailer claims agent who was handling my possessions, he was transferred to another department, and Liberty Mutual told me that they could not transfer his files to the new agent for some reason, and that I'd have to begin the claim all over again. Since my brain would only function for 1 or 2 hours a day, this was a huge amount of work that all had to be repeated. And then, as expected, Liberty Mutual tried to undervalue everything, and I was ready to document everything that I could to argue for appropriate value, the value that I believed I'd covered. But Liberty Mutual played real serious hardball. The worst, most egregious action was in undervaluing my trailer home. I used to work in real estate, and I've done market analyses in real estate for years, and I understand the process, the math of it very well. So it made no sense when their calculations valued my trailer as worth less than their two comparables, which were smaller and older and had 8 and 10 fewer very valuable amenities, things like awnings and video and stereo systems and outdoor speakers. And at first I thought it was simply a new agent who just didn't understand mathematics. And I spent days and then weeks trying to help the agent see the logical error. But eventually, I was just told that the values of the amenities of my trailer and the way they are added or subtracted is proprietary, essentially intellectual property, and they don't have to show it to anyone. And so they just ignored my assertion that whatever the numbers or the values were on all the things that my trailer had that the two comparables didn't, that the result should be larger than the older, smaller trailers, not less. But the agents and their managers continued to pretend that they just didn't get my point, which was worth $4,000. Now, they did offer to let me invoke an appraisal clause, but what that means is that I would pay two different arbitrators that Liberty Mutual would choose, after which I would be bound by their decision and unable to make any further claim against the company. This didn't sound like a wise legal decision, and so this part of our dispute remains unresolved. My second major complaint that's unresolved is that they refused to honor the insurance I'd purchased for my possessions. I'd called specifically to make sure that I'd covered my photovoltaic system that was professionally designed and installed, worth $2,000, and the custom-built camper that my brother spent 4 days building, and I had receipts for $600 worth of materials and wasn't even counting the labor, and all my worldly possessions, including computers, which I'd valued up to $15,000, though I would only claim 2 of it. First, they said my contents insurance didn't cover possessions, but only covered items that were designed for and attached to the vehicle. Now, as a professional writer, the word contents I know is correct for something contained in your vehicles. It doesn't seem correct that it would be something attached to it, but they would not budge on that definition. Then, when I realized that the photovoltaic system was attached, as was the camper shell, now they suddenly changed course and says, oh, those should have been covered with customization insurance, and you didn't buy customization insurance. So it seems that they're mixing up their definitions of terms and have 2 categories that all mean the same thing, attached to, and that I didn't buy the right one, and I'm just left with having purchased the wrong insurance, they said. So I asked for a copy of the recording of the sales call, and they requested it for me and continued to tell me for months that it was in their pipeline, until later they told me it had been destroyed, meaning that I couldn't prove that what I paid for was for my possessions, and Liberty Mutual wouldn't cover any of them. Now, at one point, one claims agent told me that they thought that they would pay if I supplied photos and receipts of everything. So, with a concussion and a whiplash, I went through boxes and I found photos and receipts, and I put together a database of all my possessions that had been lost or damaged, and proved that they existed, and proved that I'd bought them and what their value was, only to be told, oh, no, your possessions aren't covered. So that was weeks of painful work that I did for nothing. The third main thing they did was undervalue my truck. I had a rare Toyota T100 in very good condition, but I accepted their low payment because I simply needed the money. So all this seems so wrong, and with everyone I talked to agreeing with me, I contacted a number of attorneys. And every attorney who took the time to look at my case told me I was correct, but that the total value, around $5,000 to $6,000 I was thinking at the time, wasn't enough to interest them. Now, before contacting any attorneys, I tried working my way up in the Liberty Mutual system. As a business consultant and former legal secretary, I was totally confident talking to managers about the processes and legal definitions, etc. And I found 6 managers in the claims dispute department, the resolution specialist department, the escalation team, the presidential service team, the billing department, and even sales and service. All these managers checked my file, followed my story, and told me I was correct. They saw errors that others had apparently missed, and they promised to correct this error and free my file from this terrible catch-22 that had apparently happened. They apologized profusely and promised to call me back later that very same day and tell me they'd fixed the problem. But every time, I never heard from them again. Finally, I wrote the Attorney General of Arizona, who wrote me back that Liberty Mutual had acknowledged that I'd increased my covered property. And then on the very next page, Liberty Mutual wrote to the Attorney General that I had no coverage for personal property. But then in another paragraph, they said that I had coverage for up to $500 in customized equipment, but they never even paid me for that. So, Liberty Mutual claimed that I had accepted their offer of resolution. I had not accepted it, but they told the Attorney General that I had, and so the AG closed my case without allowing me any further comment. So after a few months, I began to get a new sort of treatment. I'd be placed on hold for over an hour and then would be disconnected. In one of my last phone calls that actually went through, about a year after the highway crash, I was told that my insurance didn't cover possessions if one was living in their recreational vehicle. I'd never heard this before. The salesperson shouldn't have sold me my possessions insurance because they couldn't cover it. And they should have told me that long before. And then as for the $500 customization limit that they told to the Attorney General, I've never had an agent answer me about that. When I said, well, how about that? Can I at least have that? No answer ever came back. And so if you want a summary, I have it. They denied all my contents coverage, including my photovoltaic system, my custom-built camper, and all my personal possessions after destroying the sales call tape. They undervalued my truck by at least $1,000. They deducted values from my trailer where they should have added them, robbing me of $4,000. They required I do strenuous work for 2 days immediately following a traumatic crash. They changed their agent and required I begin all over again. They encouraged me 6 times that they'd seen the error and would fix it, and then they went silent and never picked up the phone again. They encouraged me to do weeks of physical and detail work to produce that database with all those photos and receipts, and then denied it all. Repeatedly put me on hold, disconnected me, wrote a lie to the Attorney General that I'd accepted their resolution, and they never even acknowledged the $500 coverage they wrote to the AG about. And I've continued to write them, and they now simply ignore all my letters. That's my story. Well, yes, if somebody at Liberty Mutual would look into my file and see that it was handled very, very wrongly, and look at these 3 points specifically about my possessions, the trailer value, and the truck value, and then actually go over those numbers with me and come to a more honest decision and pay me and pay me the difference, I'd appreciate it. I think they owe it to me. It's just sort of my last hope to get any sort of justice. If I can't get justice in the form of dollars, then I want the sort of justice in at least being able to put my true story out there for others to see.